In this video, we're going to try to decode what Putin was trying to project out to the world at the Shanghai conference over the last couple of days. So he had strategic goals behind what he was saying, and we want to look at what he said and why he was saying it, and then kind of pop the balloons of what he was saying. Okay, so let's start here though. Today is VJ Day, or Victory Over Japan Day. It marks the end of World War II. It's September 2nd, 1945. September 2nd is the official date for the formal signing of the surrender documents aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Now, tomorrow there's going to be a big parade related to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference related to that. And this is all intentional, right? Like they're doing this for a reason. On World War II anniversary, China is seeking to erase the U.S. role in victory, according to the Washington Post. As it celebrates its 80th anniversary of Japanese surrender, China is trying to recast wartime history by downplaying U.S. help while emphasizing Moscow's role. Okay, it's very similar to what you see when you see something like this, the parade marking the 80th anniversary of the Great Patriotic War. Like, you know, they still call it the Great Patriotic War. They don't call it World War II, where they started with a pact with the Nazis to invade Poland. They don't talk about that part. They kind of minimize those things. Okay, so during his speech with Putin, President Xi spoke of the great responsibility of China and Russia as the main winner countries in World War II. China got pretty beat up, and then afterwards had a huge revolution with Mao. And so, I mean, yeah, and affirmed decisiveness of the two countries in defending the outcomes of World War II and the historic truth. Well, what happened after World War II for China was Mao, and what happened after World War II is that the Soviets invaded all parts of Eastern Europe, and then that finally collapsed when the Soviet Union collapsed. So it's like you got to get the whole picture here before you start talking like this. President Xi, during the meeting with Prime Minister Modi, said the world today is swept by once-in-a-century transformations. The internal situation is both fluid and chaotic. China and India are two ancient civilizations in the East. We're two of the most populous countries, and we're also an important members of the global South. And it's the right choice for both sides to be friends who have good neighborly and amicable ties and have the dragon and the elephant dance together. Now, they haven't always been friends. In fact, they've been at odds for the last 3 decades. But it seems like our current policies, at least in the United States, are not helping keep them separate, but pushing them into each other's arms. So Gerashenko's question is, are we witnessing the formation of a new strong alliance between China and India? We might be, but what came out in the documents doesn't seem that terrible. Like it seems like they talk a lot about this, but they don't actually do a lot with it. Okay, so what actually came out today were Russian Gazprom signed an agreement to build the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline to China through Mongolia. And this was, will they or won't they? Gazprom also agreed to deliver more gas to China through other routes. The existing Power of Siberian pipeline and the Far Eastern Link plan to start working in 2027. Gazprom will ship up to 50 billion cubic meters a year through the Power of Siberia 2 for 30 years. Okay, and it sounds terrible, and what's actually happening is that Russia is finding another market for its natural gas, and it's going to go to China, and so they're going to be able to, you know, offset what they would have done to Europe, except this. However, the price will be lower than what Europe currently pays. And obviously, China will make full use of being Russia's main buyer to bargain for a price as low as possible. And I think that's what they're going to get. Russia will be able to sell it, but they're not going to be able to make the premiums that they used to make. Now, here's some more news. The U.S. sought to turn India into a counterweight to China and weaken its ties with Moscow. And that's why the images of these 3 leaders that you see here, Xi and Modi and Putin, holding hands. It was kind of weird kumbaya kind of moment, but that's why that is a symbolic kind of thing, and it's gotten some play. In his speech, Xi criticized Cold War era thinking and bullying policies without naming Trump directly. Lavrov was even more intense today in his comments, which were clearly targeted at President Trump. Modi and Vladimir Putin rode together in a limousine. You saw some images on that in social media, talking privately for about an hour. Later, the Indian Prime Minister said 1.4 billion Indians are eagerly awaiting your visit this year. So, yeah, come on down. You're our buddy. Okay. He made it clear purchases of Russian oil will continue and ties with China will further develop. So, what's the U.S. doing? Well, not a whole lot. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But you wonder why Modi and Putin are so close? Well, Russia is now offering India a $3 to $4 discount per barrel on Urals crude versus Brent, which is up from just $1 in July. And that's a function of U.S. pressure to curb Moscow's energy exports. They're making a different deal that makes it even a little bit sweeter. Okay, the EU is pushing, meanwhile, for stricter documentation from gas importers to prove its origin, aiming to enforce its Russian gas ban by 2028. Okay, like by 2028, it's 2025 now. The war has been going on since 2022, but they'll ban Russian gas by 2028. Why so long? Importers may soon need to verify that no Russian gas is mixed in, a move that could reshape liquefied natural gas flows and compliance across Europe. So, you can't just sell it to one country and then that country resells it and everything's all good. Okay, Putin's talks with Xi ended without the Kremlin's key goal, which was to bring back Union Pay back to Russia and launching mirror cards in China. These are Russian mirror cards. They signed 22 documents, but none of them were a breakthrough in banking. And that's where Putin really needed it. Beijing refused to resume Union Pay services for Russian clients. These cards once helped sanctioned banks, but since last year, they've stopped working abroad, including in China. Two sides also failed to agree on accepting mirror cards. Since February 2024, the system operator has been under U.S. sanctions. But they did introduce visa-free travel between Russia and China. So there you go. There's something. Okay, this is from Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Liberty. The SCO, that's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's final declaration, avoided even mentioning the conflict in Ukraine, which has become a full-scale war since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. It's surprising that the largest war of aggression in Europe since World War II was not reflected in such an important fundamental document, which mentions a number of other wars and tea attacks and events throughout the world, but no mention of Ukraine, which is really kind of bizarre. Another high-profile diplomatic event in China will be held on September 3rd, a massive military parade that I was just describing earlier, commemorating the 80th anniversary of World War II. Many leaders, including Putin, are remaining in China after the SCO to attend the parade. Okay, so that's what's going on there. And so where's Trump in this? We'll get to that. So here's Sputnik's talking about more key statements by Putin during the meeting with Fico. Ukraine's security, for example, cannot be ensured at the expense of Russia's security. Wait a minute. Russia's the aggressor pummeling Ukraine. Why is their security the important thing? Like Ukraine didn't ask for this. Ukraine wasn't picking a fight. Russia considers Ukraine's membership in NATO unacceptable, and Russia exercised patience for a long time when Ukrainians struck its energy infrastructure, and then they began to respond seriously. Really? Let's talk about some of these. So Russia considers Ukraine's NATO membership unacceptable, and Garry Kasparov posted to that particular quote, "Local murderer considers the police in bulletproof vests to be unacceptable." Isn't that kind of what it's like? I mean, that's just on a small individual scale, but on a large scale, it's kind of the same thing. And how does Russia get to veto this anyway? And Russia's vetoing this in light of that map the other day that we saw that pushed Russia's border all the way up to NATO's border. It's kind of bizarre. Okay, Putin said any reasonable person fully realizes that Russia has never had, does not have, and will never have any desire to attack anyone. There are experts, not in fairy tales, but in horror films, he says. what we see now is a constant exacerbation of hysteria about Russia allegedly planning to attack Europe. But you know what? You denied that you were going to attack Ukraine, and then you attacked Ukraine. So, I mean, fool me once kind of thing, right? And Russia State Duma member Viktor Sobolov has once again voiced the imperial ambitions. I talked about this yesterday, claiming that regions like Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Odessa are all part of Russia, must be fully liberated as part of the so-called special military operation, which would extend Russia's borders all the way to Moldova and Romania. So, I mean, just call me skeptical, but I don't see that they don't have any more ambition. Okay. Putin said we endured for a very long time as Ukrainian troops carried out constant strikes on our energy facilities. After that, notice the after that seems to be the preface to what they're about. After that, we began to retaliate. Well, it's weird because you describe retaliation as coming after the fact, but you've been retaliating since 2022. You've been going after Ukraine in a huge way that's like pretaliating. Can I say that? And we are retaliating, let's say, in a serious way. That's true. Okay. Russia's been attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure since 2022, and it's resulted in blackouts for millions of Ukrainian civilians. So, I mean, this is a warping history. Okay. The crisis, Putin says, the crisis lies in the West's attempt to drag Ukraine into NATO. Is the West really trying to drag Ukraine into NATO? The West was kind of stiff-arming NATO and not letting it into the club once they floated the idea. A direct threat to Russia's security after the 2014 coup. Okay, it's not a coup, but he keeps talking about this. Leadership rejecting NATO was removed. We value efforts of China, India, and others, and talks in Alaska to promote the settlement of the crisis. Okay, first, NATO has never dragged a single member to join the alliance. Virtually every new member since 1991 has joined due to fear of Russia. If anything, an argument's to be made that it was Russia's saber-rattling that dragged those countries into NATO, but it wasn't like NATO doing it by force. Okay. And then if you go back even further, this is Representative Don Bacon talking about this kind of thing. Putin said this crisis when the West tried to drag Ukraine into NATO in 2014, totally false. Putin fails to mention when Russia poisoned Viktor Yushchenko in 2004 with dioxin. Viktor was a candidate for president and won. Here's a before and after picture of the poisoning. Yeah. I mean, like, let's just be fair with the facts. Okay. Now, the Kremlin is also dragging out President Yanukovych, the one who fled in 2014. The Kremlin has likely timed the publication of a video address by former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych to coincide with Putin's SCO speech in order to lend legitimacy to Putin's demand for regime change in Ukraine. The Kremlin may be setting conditions to claim that Yanukovych is actually the legitimate leader of Ukraine, even though he fled. Not Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was duly elected by the Ukrainian people. Such claims are false, however, as Yanukovych fled Ukraine on his own accord after the Revolution of Dignity, and Ukraine has held several democratic elections since. But what Putin wants is a puppet like Yanukovych to be in power, and then you wouldn't have had to have this messy war. All right. After talks with Putin and China and call with Zelensky, Erdogan said that the two sides are not yet ready for a leaders' summit. He stressed that Turkey supports gradually raising the level of talks to achieve peace, but added that conditions for top-level meeting are still lacking. Erdogan's one of the big winners in all of this because his stature has risen as he's playing peacemaker. Okay. Meanwhile, President Vučić of Serbia says Serbia, since the beginning of the Ukrainian crisis, has been in a very difficult situation and under great pressure. Despite this, we have managed to maintain our principled position. Well, what is that principled position? Today, we are the only country in Europe that has not imposed any sanctions on the Russian Federation. And we, of course, will continue to maintain our military neutrality in the future. That's your principled position? Okay. And Trump, now let's turn our attention to the next big story, is expected to address the nation later today. It is about 1:30 as I speak, and he's going to be addressing the nation at 2 for Putin to make, and the deadline it was set for Putin to make significant progress toward peace deal in Ukraine yesterday, and we haven't heard from him yet. And people are going, oh, "Where's Trump? Is he even still alive?" Don't believe that kind of nonsense. Just don't. Life's hard enough without speculation over stupid stuff, right? Okay, so he'll be addressing the nation at 2. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said all options are on the table, talking about potential new sanctions against Moscow after Russia escalates its bombardment for Ukraine. Don't believe that until you see it. When you see it actually happen, don't believe what they say, believe what they actually do. Okay, Trump's administration has been actually actively pushing the idea of Department of Defense being called the Department of War. Okay, now, so everybody expected news on Ukraine, but it looks like, and I could be completely wrong, it looks like, though, that Trump will make a statement about the Pentagon. And here's Jackie Heinrich from Fox News talking about the new press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, on today's 2 p.m. event. The president will be making an exciting announcement regarding the Department of Defense. So, is it renaming the Department of Defense into the Department of War? I don't know if that's it or not. But if you're worried about that, and again, don't just buy into stupid stuff. That's another sign that he's an authoritarian coming to take over. No. That's not how it works. The Department of Defense was called the Department of War for all of its history until 1947. The United States Department of War, also called the War Department, and occasionally the War Office in the early years, was the United States Cabinet Department originally responsible for the operation and maintenance of the United States Army, also bearing responsibility for naval affairs until the establishment of the Navy Department in 1798, and for most land-based air forces until the creation of the Department of the Air Force. Secretary of War, a civilian with such responsibilities as finance and purchases and minor role in directing military affairs, headed the War Department throughout its existence. The War Department existed for 158 years from August 7th, 1789 to September 18th, 1947, when it was split into these various departments, and then it was reestablished as one thing called the Department of Defense in 1949. So don't flip out if you hear something like that today. Okay. Another Air Force update today. There were 2 of these today, 2/9/2025. So here's the first one with 150 drones night overnight, September 1 to 2. And then here's a second one that followed. Another Air Force update. Ukraine's Air Force has shot down or suppressed 48 Russian drones after a renewed overnight attack from the north. So this is after the normal thing was put out in the morning. Everything was supposed to be all clear. And then I put out this video, rush hour attack in Kyiv. Because they were hitting afterwards. So that's where this comes from. So as of 1600 Kyiv time, the drone groups are still active over Cherniv and Sumy regions. So, okay, that's what's been happening today. And at the same time, the Ukrainians are like hitting down, particularly into Crimea. And at this moment, massive strike with Ukrainian Neptune and Flamingo cruise missiles is underway in the Crimean Peninsula. In some cities, loud explosions have been heard. So we'll certainly follow up with you about that soon, or very soon. This afternoon, I'm going to talk with Greg Terry, so be looking for that, and we'll get the skinny on what's going on. If you're not familiar with him, or if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Okay, this is just a quick little follow-up. Gabrielas Landsbergis, the foreign minister, the former foreign minister from Lithuania, says deeply concerned to hear about the deeply concerning GPS interference that diverted von der Leyen's flight. Europe stands united in expression of deep concerns and must commit to the deployment of ever-deepening concerns moving forward. Well, of course, he's mocking that they don't do anything. I talked about this yesterday. Did Russia plot to kill okay, hold on. Somebody help me with my pronunciation yesterday. Von der Leyen. How'd I do? So I was saying von der Leyen, but it's von der Leyen, as I understand. Probably not, but here's what happened. And so they mess with it looks like the Russians mess with their GPS, and they've been doing this and doing it, but they're not going to do anything about it, so it'll keep happening. All right, last little bit from Darth Putin. On this day in 2014, I said I could conquer Kyiv in 2 weeks. I can't conquer Donbass in 4 years or Kursk in over a year, but I never actually said which 2 weeks. I remain master strategist. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you in this video. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.